Well, I'm back. I thought I would do a video. I don't know how long it'll be. I'm not super inspired, to be honest with you, but we have one additional subscriber, up to 30, even though the views are down because probably because I have not been, adding many new videos. But I wanted to continue with a reflection on the Gospel of John, trying to get into the spirituality of what this gospel is expounding to us regarding Jesus in its own particular way. And as I said, I do these videos oftentimes, or really essentially, sometimes for myself, to try to draw some inspiration from the scriptures during times when things are so sad and bewildering. And I was reading N.T. Wright just prior to this. I'm on page 1046 of his book on Paul, and clearly he's talking about how recent scholarship is now aware of the high Christology in all four Gospels, not just John. So that was very interesting. I did my doctoral work on Mark, and even though Mark is supposed to be the simplest gospel, and I did take a course at Harvard Divinity School with Bishop Demetrios Trakatellis back in '84, and he was going by Vincent Taylor's big commentary on Mark. Just 15 years later, less than 15 years later, when I did my doctoral work, I said what I'm doing has nothing to do with what Bishop Demetrios Trakatellis at Harvard, he himself having a PhD from Harvard under Helmut Kester, he did his doctoral work on Justin Martyr. But it just goes to show how the views of the past, not so distant past, are outdated because they are insufficient given what further reflection does. That having been said, I will approach the gospel according to my training and tradition, training as a Dominican, faith seeking understanding, theology, as I've said, and again, I wanted to say something about if something is too academic and not spiritual enough. In the Dominican tradition, I was thinking this morning, trying to remember Thomas Aquinas. It's the intellect, it's knowledge of truth and beauty, which are closely linked, that then makes the will love. So, if I recall correctly, the beatific vision, being in heaven, will be fully seeing God face to face, and this will result in a complete bonding of the will with God. And so, that having been said, even though my approach will be to read the gospel um, with this, theological and exegetical training that I've cultivated for many years, what I am seeking, along with perhaps all of you, is to try to get the spiritual nourishment that the gospel provides. Now, this particular passage we left off, I think, at John 1:42, the naming of Simon as Peter, big rock, Petros. The following day, again, you see these references to specific days almost. Uh, Jesus calls Philip, who is from Bethsaida, the same city as Andrew and Peter, and Philip finds Nathaniel uh, and says to him, "We have found the one of whom Moses in the law and the prophets wrote, Jesus, the son of Joseph from Nazareth." And Nathaniel says to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" And Philip says, "Come and see," which is the same kind of thing that Jesus has been saying. So you have an imitation of the first disciples of the very uh, things that Jesus has said. And Jesus sees Nathanael coming toward him and says of him, "Behold, a true Israelite, um, in whom there is no guile or deceit." And Nathanael says, "From where do you know me?" And Jesus says to him, "Before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you." I'm trying to follow the Latin because I can't rely even on the English Standard Version. The Greek I could be looking at too, but not quite as easy as the Latin on the spot like this. Um, And Nathanael responds, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. Um, you are the King of Israel." And Jesus says to him, "Because I said I saw you under the fig tree, you believe. Greater things than these you shall see. You shall see uh, the heavens open and the angels of God going up and coming down upon the Son of Man." Now that's very interesting, and I've given some thought to this and some reading on this, not a huge amount perhaps, but enough to say something interesting. Obviously, being under a fig tree, from a superficial reading, it means really nothing. But in the Bible, of course, being under a fig tree is one of the characteristics of the Messianic age, where everything is peaceful and the beasts of the field and the pagan nations are not a menace anymore. And what a good Jew does under the fig tree, or everybody next to his vine, is to study the Torah or to study the scriptures. And so, one thing that I read, and I think I may have mentioned this before, but one thing that I read was that Jesus tells Nathanael that he is a true son of Jacob or son of Israel, which is the name that Jacob gets in Genesis 32, in whom there is no guile or deceit. And if you know anything about the Jacob cycle, I think beginning in 28, but really from the womb, Jacob is a deceiver, a jipper, someone who, steals. Even the name Yaakov is supposed to refer to a heel, like being at the heel of somebody, sort of attacking them, etc. And the whole story of Jacob is about being deceived by Laban, who gets him the wrong daughter at night and then makes him work another 7 years for Leah, the daughter, or rather Rachel, the daughter he really wants. And then Jacob tricks Laban, deceives Laban with the raising of the flocks with these magical sticks and all these kinds of things. Jacob is completely known as a deceiver. I think the earliest traditions on Jacob may be found in the book of Hosea, and not nice things are said about Jacob there. Um, if I could find it quickly, I would. He's going to visit Jacob for his conduct. This is in Hosea 12. He fought with the angel, etc. So when Jesus tells Nathaniel, which the tradition says that Nathaniel is the same thing as Bartholomew, the son of Ptolemy, that you are a true son of Jacob without the deceit that characterized your eponymous ancestor by they gave the name Israel to Israel. Jesus is indicating to Nathaniel that Nathaniel has been studying these very chapters of Genesis 28 through 32. And the talk about angels coming up and down on the Son of Man is exactly the same thing that is told in the Jacob ladder passage in Genesis, where he sees angels coming up and down in Genesis 28. He goes to this place, etc., and calls it Bethel. And so I think that typically in this Gospel of John, these double meanings and hidden meanings and subtext type of stuff is incredibly interesting. And so, and this is one of the rare kind of instances of Son of Man in John. And of course, in the book of Daniel, chapter 7, where you have the big Son of Man passage, you do have talk of many angels, myriads, serving the Ancient of Days, and the Jewish tradition, two thrones are set up, one for the Ancient of Days, the Almighty, and the Messiah or David. And so you have this further development of sort of a Genesis to Daniel type of biblical comprehensiveness. The gospel has begun with, in the beginning was the Word, Genesis 1. And then some canons of the Septuagint in Greek, Greek translation of the Old Testament, Daniel is the last book, because Daniel ends in chapter 12 with the resurrection and judgment and things like that. They've added Baal and the dragon and the chaste Susan to that book, but the real ending of Daniel is chapter 12, the end of days. So, what spirituality can we get out of this? We have to situate ourselves in a community and a writer, maybe with different redactions and development or something like we saw with the second ending, etc., where the mystery of who Jesus is now expounded, set forth in a very different way from the synoptics, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, not exactly because of a higher Christology, but rather because of a very different, a non-repetitive, if you will, presentation of this primordial intuition that God has come down in the form of Jesus. I'm reading N.T. Wright, as I've said. The return of Yahweh to Zion, or to end the exile, or to rescue his people, etc., has occurred uh, totally unexpectedly and in a totally shocking manner in this Jesus of Nazareth. This is the core of the Christian belief. And so what you have is presentations of things that in an artistic way, which is what the Bible is a painting, an artistic depiction, not a digital photograph. We've covered this in the many sessions I've done. And my best example is Thérèse of Lisieux, the little flower, Thérèse of the Child Jesus. Her sister Celine was both a photographer and a painter. She took a lot of photos of Thérèse, and she did a lot of paintings of Thérèse that all differ quite a bit. And the nuns said that the paintings revealed more faithfully who Therese was than the photographs, and so that God has had to resort to art and artistic composition, literature, if you will, to transmit heavenly truths or even human experience of the numinous or of the divine in Jesus. So the stories are meant not to be looked at literally, but as in Mexico they have retablos, little paintings with scenes from the life of, so that we can, from various angles, already with four gospels, you have four different angles, like four different movies of the same person or something. In this gospel, you have these, paintings, diptychs, triptychs, whatever name there is for these scenes from, etc. So now you have this basic introduction to John, where you have the witness, John the Baptist. His disciples follow Jesus. Jesus is identified as the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. Echoes of Isaiah, the Son of God or the chosen one of God, which is also an Isaiah thing, my chosen one in whom my soul delights. So some of the readings of John 134 have that variant, chosen one of God instead of the Son of God. And then you jump right into a very much of a return of Yahweh to Israel in the form of a husband. This would be a very beautiful image of biblical passages So, for example, you would have in Isaiah 54 um, talking about this marital rift that occurred between Yahweh and Israel, but without there ever having been a divorce decree or document. And it says that for a brief moment I abandoned you, but really the wife of one's youth is never abandoned. I hid my face for an instant, but I loved you with an eternal chesed or love. And it'll be like in the days of Noah. This is Isaiah 54, when I said that the waters would no longer, uh, destroy the earth. My chesed, my eternal chesed, will not depart from your side, and my covenant of peace shall not be moved. I'm kind of reading from my Jerusalem Bible in Spanish. Then, of course, you've got the very famous and beautiful and dear to the Carmelites passage in Hosea, where it's all about marriage. Yahweh is the legitimate husband of Israel. Israel has been adulterous and unfaithful by following Baal, the Canaanite fertility god, whose rituals involved sacred prostitution. Baal means both husband and Lord. And Israel mistakenly thinks that Baal is the one that provides the wine and the oil and the wheat. And I just noticed that, of course, the whole thing in Cana is about wine. So that in Hosea, and this is what is read in Carmelite masses for some of these Carmelite virgins, like so many of them, Therese, Elizabeth of the Trinity, Stein, etc. I will betroth you in uh, righteousness and in mishpat or social justice, in chesed, this unexpected love that's transcends any comprehension, and in rachamim, which is uh, the mother's womb compassion word. I will betroth you in emuna, this faithfulness or fidelity, and you shall know Yahweh. This da'at, this knowledge has, of course, this sexual intimacy. I know not man, or he knew his wife or whatever. So this is a total marriage passage in Hosea 2. And so here you have, right after the intro to John, the very first thing that this writer wants to do is to talk about a wedding. And the mother of Jesus was there. She's never called Mary. She's either woman or the mother of Jesus. The foot of the cross, this is repeated. This is like a bookend to the cross scene where the mother of Jesus was standing there, and Jesus says, "Woman, behold your son, and behold your mother," etc. And so you have uh, this wedding where Jesus and his mother, and Eve is the mother of all the living. Um, Eve had prodded Adam to sin and caused the fall. The new Eve prods the Son, the new Adam, to unleash the eschatological events of salvation, if you will. And Jesus is hesitant to move up his hour, so to speak. This is kind of a ploy in a way, a dramatic device perhaps. When the mother of Jesus says to him, they have no wine, and she doesn't say, would you make some wine for them? She simply states a fact. They have no wine. In the eschatological age, end of Amos, etc., the hills will flow with wine. Wine is a sign of abundance, happiness, gladdens the heart. It'll be so abundant in Genesis 49 when the Messiah comes, you can wash your clothes in wine, which most people don't like to get a spot of wine on their clothes, but that's an image. He says, woman, what is there between you and me? Or what is it to you and me? My hour has not yet arrived. What to you and to me, woman? My hour is not yet. And his mother said to the servants, do whatever he tells you. So this is a very subtle and really delicate presentation of Mary, without being named that, very subtly saying to obey Jesus, almost like the Father in the Transfiguration. Listen, this is my beloved Son, listen to him. There is no transfiguration in John. There would be no reason for it. Jesus is going to be glorified on the cross, and he's almost transfigured from the beginning, if you want to call it that. And so then, famously, these large stone jars are filled to the brim, you know, and they're turned into delicious wine. This would be a very interesting way to fulfill the passages, like I said, end of Amos, which is all connected, messianic. I will raise the fallen sukkah, the fallen hut of David, which is in ruins, and you won't be finished, harvesting your field before you have to plant again, because harvests will succeed one another in rapid succession. And so you have this restoration of the fallen house of David at the very end of, on that day, by Yom Hahu, which is always an eschatological day. I will repair its, ruins, etc. Ha Nofele, the fallen hut. My notes say that this would be a reference to Bar Nifle, which is a messianic title in 1 Chronicles 3:24. So this is getting a little technical, perhaps. I just want to at least share with you, even superficially, how much richness there is in reading these texts carefully. And it's very spiritual, but it is somewhat technical. So if you went to 1 Chronicles 3:24, you have a post-exilic monarchic lineage. So you have all these descendants of kings, and you finally get to the sons of El Yoenai, and one of them is Anani, which is revocalized. Listen to this. It's from my notes that I've annotated my Bible for many, many years. This is not in the the normal Jerusalem Bible. Anani, of the 7 sons, it's revocalized. So they put different vowels in the Hebrew purely consonantal text, just consonants. You can put vowels that could change the meaning of a word. And it's revocalized with to a nane, which means with the clouds, which of course would be a reference to the Messiah in Daniel 7 who comes with the clouds. And the Midrash Tanhuma in Toledot, I guess section 20, is where you find this kind of rabbinic, super delving into this stuff and playing with words to get the juice out as much as you can. So, a marriage is incredibly important. And this is the first sign that Jesus did in Cana of Galilee and manifested his glory. So the minute his hour, which is his death, when he's glorified on the cross, the minute his hour is pushed forward in the first, sign, they don't use the word miracle in this gospel, you have already the, as I said, unleashing of the eschatological events. I came up with that expression when I was dealing with the tying and untying of the donkey in Mark for the messianic entry in Mark 11. And I read an article by my professor Joseph Blenkingsop, The Oracle of Judah and the Messianic Entry, where he says that all this space devoted to tying and untying, and if they ask you why are you untying and this and that and untying, well, untying something that Matthew, for example, cuts out, it's because this tied and untied donkey is a reference to Genesis 49. He will, which we were talking about, he ties his donkey to the vine, and not just the donkey. The actual meaning of this donkey and the son of a donkey is, as the only Bible that has the right translation here, the New American Bible, the Catholic Lectionary Bible. It's really a purebred jackass. So I think they call them the Saint Andre, Cross Saint Andre. They have like a cross on the back of these donkeys that are fertile. They're purebred. They're not like a hybrid infertile. And so this donkey can be tied, not just any donkey, a purebred jackass can be tied to the vine, not just any vine, but the choicest vine, without fear he's going to eat grapes. I think Father Richard Clifford says in his commentary in the New Jerome Biblical Commentary, because there's such an abundance of grapes, you can wash your clothes in wine. I was just reading The Heart is a Lonely Hunter by Carson McCullers, and one of the rumors was that in France they don't have water, all they have is wine. It's an exaggeration, but you have here then this revealing of his glory, and his disciples believed in him. It's going to be, an imperfect belief, but you have this passage. After this, he went down to Capernaum, himself and his mother and his brothers and his disciples, and there they remained not many days. So, and again, I'm going, by the Latin, translation, which is very, very literal. U polas hemeras. Not they stayed there for a few days. Well, fine. I prefer more literal. I could probably try the King James at some point and see whether they are more literal than the English Standard Version. But now, having finished this, we're going to get into the temple cleansing next time. There I will be, more inspired because I did my doctoral work on the so-called temple act or cleansing in Mark, but I had to really look at all the versions of this event, which John puts in the beginning of the ministry, right after Cana, and not at the end, as we said, because the end will be the raising of Lazarus as the last sign that really gets Jesus' opponents upset. And with that, I'm going to stop and I'm going to look into this King James thing to see whether it isn't the best Bible to use to be literal. Otherwise, I don't even know if people can read this on the screen, but I can read the various texts, and I prefer perfectly literal if possible.